The evening air buzzed with tension. The sun dipped below the city skyline, casting long shadows across the park's winding paths. A woman, Luna, hurried through, her mind restless with the day's worries. She had a habit of coming here to clear her thoughts, but tonight, unease pricked at the edges of her awareness. She quickened her pace, hoping the familiar comfort of the park would calm her. But suddenly, a shadow detached from the tree line, stepping into her path. A man in a police uniform, tall and broad-shouldered, blocked her way. His name tag read Officer Brooks. "Good evening," he said, a slow, unsettling smile spreading across his face. Luna glanced around, realizing with a shiver that the park's usual crowd had thinned out, leaving her isolated. Her grip tightened on her phone. She didn't recognize Brooks, but the weight of his stare felt like a threat. "Nice night, isn't it?" Brooks continued, his voice dripping with a false casualness. He moved closer, ignoring her attempt to step back. Luna forced a smile, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes, I guess." The tension crackled between them, sharp and uncomfortable. She tried to turn, but Brooks moved faster, closing the gap. "You know, it's rare to find someone as lovely as you out here alone," he murmured, his gaze sliding over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Luna's heart pounded. She glanced toward the nearby path, hoping for a passerby, but no one appeared. She took a deep breath, keeping her tone firm. "I'm waiting for someone." "Oh yeah?" Brooks' smile didn't reach his eyes. "Must be nice having someone looking out for you." His hand brushed her arm, then lingered. Luna jerked away, the fear now a solid knot in her stomach. She turned to leave, but he caught her by the wrist, the pressure of his grip sending a jolt of pain through her arm. "Hey, let go," she snapped, her voice rising. Brooks' smile faded, replaced by a hard, cold stare. "You're making a mistake, sweetheart. Just trying to be friendly." Luna struggled, yanking her arm free, stumbling back a few steps. The officer's eyes narrowed, and in that moment, she realized this wasn't just a casual encounter. It was a power play, and he wasn't going to let her walk away so easily. Just as panic was about to swallow her whole, a voice cut through the tension. "Luna!" It was her husband, Alex, rushing down the path toward them. Relief surged through her as she saw the familiar figure, his face drawn tight with worry. "Everything okay here?" Alex demanded, stepping between Luna and Brooks. His presence was a shield, but even he couldn't hide the fury flashing in his eyes as he glanced at his wife's strained expression. Brooks straightened, his smile morphing into a smirk as he looked Alex up and down. "Just a misunderstanding," he drawled, but the challenge in his tone was unmistakable. "Back off," Alex warned, his voice low and steady, though his fists clenched at his sides. Brooks didn't budge. Instead, he took a deliberate step closer, his hand inching toward the radio clipped to his belt. "Careful now," Brooks taunted, his eyes glittering with a dangerous edge. "Wouldn't want any trouble, right?" But Alex wasn't backing down, not when he saw the fear in Luna's eyes. He squared his shoulders, his voice taking on a dangerous calm. "You're the one causing trouble. Walk away while you still can." A tense silence followed, crackling with unspoken threats. For a moment, it seemed like Brooks might back off. But then he lifted his radio, speaking into it with a smirk. "Requesting backup. Got a civilian here, making threats." Luna's heart dropped. She could see the satisfaction in Brooks' eyes, the thrill of pushing them into a corner. Alex shot her a look, trying to stay composed, but she could see the doubt creeping into his expression. Minutes later, the wail of sirens shattered the night's stillness, and 2 patrol cars skidded to a stop nearby. Officers poured out, surrounding Alex before he could react. Brooks pointed toward him with a sneer. "Arrest him." Interfering with police duty, Alex raised his hands, but his voice was hard as steel. "You don't have to do this. Think about what's right." But the officers moved in, their faces blank masks, following Brooks' orders without question. As Luna watched in horror, they shoved Alex to the ground, twisting his arms behind his back. She rushed forward, shouting, but an officer blocked her, holding her back with a warning look. "Please stop. He didn't do anything wrong." Luna's voice cracked, desperation clawing at her chest. But her pleas fell on deaf ears. They forced Alex into the back of a patrol car, ignoring his protests, ignoring her. Brooks watched it all with a twisted smile, satisfaction glimmering in his eyes. He sauntered closer to Luna, lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. See what happens when you don't know your place? Luna's hands trembled with anger and fear as she watched the car speed away, taking Alex with it. Brooks leaned in one last time, his voice a mocking murmur. You should have stayed quiet. Now you've made things much worse. With that, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Luna standing alone in the darkening park, her mind reeling from the turn of events. But as she watched his retreating back, a steely determination settled in her chest. This wasn't over. She would fight for Alex, and she would make sure the truth saw the light of day. Luna stood frozen in the park for a moment, her breath coming in quick, ragged gasps. Her mind raced, replaying the scene over and over. Alex's defiant stance, the officer's cold indifference, and the malicious smirk on Officer Brooks' face. She had to move, had to act before the situation spun even further out of control. Gripping her phone, she made a call to the only person she could think of in the moment, Mara, an old friend who worked as a lawyer. Her hands shook as she explained everything that had happened, her voice a desperate whisper against the growing night. Mara, they took Alex. They arrested him for nothing. Brooks, he's twisted. He's trying to make an example out of us. Please, you have to help. Mara's voice was sharp with focus. All business despite the late hour. Stay where you are, Luna. I'm heading to the precinct right now. Don't let them intimidate you. I'll make sure Alex is safe. The call ended, but the knot of fear in Luna's chest refused to loosen. She clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders and hurried back toward the park entrance, her mind racing with plans. She knew Mara would fight for Alex, but she couldn't just wait around. She had to gather evidence, find witnesses, anything to prove what really happened. As she reached the edge of the park, she noticed a group of teenagers with their phones out, glancing at her nervously. Luna's heart leapt with a flicker of hope. Did you see what happened back there? She asked, rushing over to them. One of the teenagers, a girl with a bright pink hoodie, nodded slowly. Yeah, we recorded it. That officer, he was being a total jerk. Luna's relief was immediate and palpable. Please, I need that video. My husband, he's in serious trouble. The teenager exchanged a glance with her friends before pulling out her phone. We were going to post it online anyway. People need to see this. Luna took a deep breath, feeling a surge of determination. Yes, post it. Let people see the truth. The girl nodded and began tapping on her phone. Luna watched as the video uploaded, praying it would reach the right people, people who could see through Brooks' lies. As the teenagers left, she finally felt a sliver of hope pierce through her fear. She wasn't alone in this fight, and she wasn't about to let Brooks win. Meanwhile, at the precinct, Alex sat in a small, dingy holding cell, his wrists bruised from the cuffs. The cold concrete floor sent chills through his body, but he kept his mind focused, refusing to give in to the despair that threatened to overwhelm him. He thought of Luna, her face, her strength, and clung to the thought like a lifeline. The door creaked open, and Brooks stepped inside, his face twisted into a smirk. He leaned against the bars of Alex's cell, folding his arms across his chest. Comfortable, are we? Thought you'd get away with disrespecting me. Huh? Alex met his stare, his jaw clenched with fury. You know this is wrong, Brooks. You're abusing your power. Brooks let out a low chuckle. Power? You don't even know the meaning of the word. You thought you could walk into my park, challenge me in front of my own men? Well, look where it got you. Alex's hands balled into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm, refusing to give Brooks the satisfaction of a reaction. This won't hold up. You know that, right? There are witnesses. People saw what you did. Brooks' smile faltered for a split second before returning, sharper than before. Doesn't matter. My word against yours. And who do you think they're going to believe? A captain with a spotless record? Or some troublemaker like you? Alex's heart pounded in his chest, anger and frustration swirling in his mind. But before he could respond, the door swung open again. Mara stepped inside, her expression a mask of professional determination. She locked eyes with Brooks, her gaze ice cold. "You're done here, officer," she snapped. "I'm Alex's attorney, and I demand you release my client immediately." Brooks scoffed, but there was a hint of unease in his expression. "You think you can waltz in here and make demands?" "He's being processed for resisting arrest." Mara's smile was cold, razor-sharp. "Resisting arrest? You mean defending his wife from a crooked officer? I've already seen the footage circulating online, and so has the public. You might want to reconsider your stance before you find yourself on the other side of those bars." Brooks' face paled. He hesitated, glancing toward the hallway where murmurs of concern could be heard from the other officers. He could feel control slipping away, the situation spiraling out of his grasp. For a brief moment, his mask of arrogance cracked, revealing the fear beneath. But he doubled down, his voice a growl. "He's not going anywhere until I say so." Mara raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "We'll see about that." She turned to Alex, a reassuring smile touching her lips. "Hold tight. I'm going to talk to the chief." Mara strode down the hallway, her heels echoing against the tiles as she made her way to the chief's office. She pushed open the door without knocking, facing Chief Ramirez, a man known for his no-nonsense attitude. He looked up from his paperwork, frowning as he took in her expression. "What's this about, Mara?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. She wasted no time, placing her phone on the desk and pressing play. The video from the park filled the screen, Brooks harassing Luna, shoving her to the ground, and then arresting Alex without cause. The chief's frown deepened as he watched, his expression hardening. "Do you see this, Chief? This is what your officer is doing, using his badge to intimidate innocent people. I demand you release Alex immediately and open an investigation into Brooks." Ramirez exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his face. "This is serious, Mara. I need to speak with Brooks." Mara's eyes flashed with anger. "He's already crossed too many lines. If you don't act now, the public backlash will be on you as well." The chief hesitated, but finally nodded. "You're right. We need to handle this carefully." Back in the holding area, Brooks stood glaring at Alex through the bars. But before he could taunt him further, the door burst open. Chief Ramirez entered, his expression thunderous. "Brooks, a word." "Now," he barked. Brooks tried to maintain his composure, but Alex could see the flicker of panic in his eyes. He shot a final glare at Alex before following the chief out of the room. As the door closed behind them, Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He could only hope that whatever Mara was doing, it would be enough to turn the tide. Out in the hallway, Chief Ramirez faced Brooks, his voice low and dangerous. "What the hell were you thinking, Brooks? I've got video evidence of you overstepping your authority. You know what kind of trouble this will cause." Brooks stiffened, his jaw clenched. "Sir, save it." Ramirez cut him off. "You're suspended pending an investigation. Hand over your badge and gun." Brooks' face twisted with disbelief and fury. "You're taking her side over mine? I'm one of your best officers." Ramirez's eyes blazed with anger. "No, you're an officer who forgot what it means to serve, and now you're going to face the consequences." Brooks reluctantly handed over his badge, his face pale with rage. He shot a venomous look toward Mara, who stood nearby with her arms crossed, watching the exchange with satisfaction. "You think you've won, but this isn't over." Brooks spat at her as he was led away. Mara's expression remained cool. It's over when Alex walks out of this building a free man. Within the hour, Alex was released, walking out of the precinct with Mara by his side. He found Luna waiting in the lobby, her eyes red from crying, but filled with relief as she ran to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. He held her close, feeling the warmth of her presence, the strength he had fought so hard to protect. "Thank you," Alex murmured to Mara, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Mara smiled, a glimmer of determination in her eyes. "You're not out of the woods yet. Brooks will fight back, and there will be fallout. But you've got the truth on your side, and the public is paying attention." Luna squeezed Alex's hand, her expression fierce. "We're not going to let him get away with this." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of everything that had happened settle on his shoulders. But for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope, a sense that they could win this fight. Together, they would see it through, no matter what it took. The next morning, Alex, Luna, and Mara convened in a small conference room in Mara's office. They were surrounded by stacks of evidence and witness statements that Mara had already gathered. The video from the teenagers was gaining traction online, and the public outcry was growing louder by the minute. News outlets had picked up the story, demanding answers about Officer Brooks and his behavior. "We need to keep up the pressure," Mara said, pacing the room. "I've already filed a formal complaint with the precinct's internal affairs, and the footage is our biggest weapon. But we also need to push for a public statement from the chief. He can't stay silent much longer." Alex nodded, his face bruised but determined. "I won't stop until Brooks is held accountable. He crossed the line, and we can't let him do this to anyone else." Luna reached out, squeezing his hand. "We'll get through this together." At the precinct, Brooks was in damage control mode, making calls to allies, trying to salvage his reputation. But each time he thought he had a handle on things, a new article would surface, or another video clip would spread. His control was slipping, and the fear gnawed at him. Meanwhile, Chief Ramirez held a press conference outside the precinct, flanked by Mara and Alex. The crowd was a mix of reporters, activists, and concerned citizens, all eager for answers. "The actions of Officer Brooks do not reflect the values of this department," Ramirez began, his voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "An internal investigation is underway, and I assure you that any misconduct will be met with the appropriate consequences." Mara stepped forward, holding up her phone. "This video has been seen by thousands. It shows Brooks abusing his authority, targeting innocent civilians. We demand transparency, and we demand justice." Alex, standing beside Mara, spoke next. His voice was hoarse but steady. "This isn't just about me or my family. It's about every person who has been silenced, intimidated, or mistreated. It's time to hold those who abuse their power accountable." The crowd erupted in applause, the energy palpable. Brooks watched from the shadows of the precinct, his face twisted with anger. He knew his time was running out, but he wasn't done yet. A few days later, Alex and Luna were at home when a knock sounded at the door. Luna tensed, but Alex signaled for her to stay back. He opened the door to find a disheveled Brooks standing on their doorstep, his eyes wild with desperation. "What are you doing here?" Alex asked, his voice low and dangerous. Brooks pushed past him, stepping into the living room. "You think you've won, don't you? But you don't understand how things work. I can still ruin you." Alex's patience snapped. He advanced on Brooks, his fists clenched, but Luna stepped between them, her voice strong. "You're done, Brooks. There's nothing you can do to intimidate us anymore." Brooks' bravado faltered as he glanced between Alex and Luna, realizing that his threats no longer held power over them. He took a shaky step back. "You'll regret this," he muttered, but the words lacked the force they once held. Before Brooks could turn to leave, two plainclothes officers appeared behind him. "Officer Brooks, you're under arrest," one of them said, cuffing his hands behind his back. "You have the right to remain silent." Brooks struggled, his face pale with disbelief. "You can't do this. I'm one of you." The officers led him out, and Alex and Luna watched as he was placed in the back of a patrol car, the same position he had forced Alex in not long ago. As the car drove away, Alex felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It was over. In the weeks that followed, the story of Brooks' downfall spread across the city. The internal investigation revealed a history of misconduct and abuses of power, and he was stripped of his badge and faced criminal charges. The precinct initiated new reforms, focusing on transparency and accountability, with Alex working alongside Chief Ramirez to ensure that real changes were made. Mara continued to fight for justice, representing others who had been mistreated by corrupt officers. Her work brought to light more cases, and the city slowly began to heal. One evening, as the sun set over the park where it all began, Alex and Luna sat on a bench, hand in hand. The air was warm, the laughter of children drifting through the trees. It felt like a new beginning. "I never thought we'd come out on top," Luna said, resting her head on Alex's shoulder. Alex smiled, pressing a kiss to her hair. "We did because we stood up for what was right. And because of you, Luna, your strength kept me going." She squeezed his hand, a quiet resolve in her eyes. "We're stronger together." They sat in silence, watching as the last rays of sunlight disappeared over the horizon, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. And with each other's support, they had already proven they could overcome the darkest of times.